I sit down at my son's new dining table, trying to believe tonight might heal old wounds. My phone buzzes with Elmer Jenkins' name, his voice tight when I answer. He asks if I'm home. I tell him, "No, I'm here with Gary." His whisper cuts through me. "Then who's inside your living room with a flashlight?" I push back my chair, reaching for my keys, but Gary moves first, sliding the chain, turning the deadbolt, pocketing the key. My pulse hammers. Hope evaporates into alarm. I don't argue, not yet. I scan the hallway for another exit, and my eyes land on the bathroom door, where a small window might be my only way out. Before we begin, please subscribe and tell us what time it is where you're watching. We love seeing this community. Dawn lifts over Riverside like a soft promise. Light threads through lace curtains and lands on Wilbur Porter's kitchen table, where the kettle begins its whistle and his lined hands fold the local paper along a crease he has made for years. He circles a coupon for coffee and sets an envelope of receipts beside his mug. In the garage, the morning smells like oil and cedar. Pegboard hooks carry each wrench in its outline. Mason jars of screws sit in rows labeled by size. The hand-oiled lawnmower starts on the first pull, as if proud to be counted on. On the mantel, memory sits in frames. Marlene smiles in a summer dress. Wilbur and a gap-toothed 12-year-old Gary grin beside the DIY go-kart they built from a junked mower, the boy's hands black with grease, the father's hand steady on the seat. A faded Polaroid shows the family farm at sunset, the barn door open like a held breath. Above the desk, an index card in square handwriting keeps him honest. Be steady, be kind, be clear. He straightens it with a fingertip, then smooths the desk blotter just once. The house answers with quiet, the kind he trusts. On the kitchen counter, a spiral notebook lies open to tidy columns. He calls it the giving ledger, though no one else has seen it. The entries read like notches on a barn beam. 2019, poker debt catch-up, 8,000. Gift. 2020, track sure bet, 12,000. Promise to repay, never repaid. 2021, truck alternator and tags, 1,300. Gift. 2022, apartment deposit after eviction notice, 1,950. Gift. In the margin, a yellow sticky says, "Because he's my son." He closes it gently and breathes once. He is an ex-farm owner who still rises with dawn, even though the fields are gone. Practical and punctual, he keeps receipts in manila folders and pencils notes on the flap. He knows the difference between a carburetor story and the truth. He pays on time, forgives often, and documents everything. When he jokes that he is too trusting, not stupid, he means that he will help when it matters and keep a record when it hurts. He calls the banker by first name and still sharpens his mower blades by feel, because old skills deserve respect. Steady suits him. Gary's path has wandered. The eager parts runner teenager became a 38-year-old who chases systems, edges, hot tables, and sports models, always one wire away from winning it back. New vocabulary fills the space where plans should live. Rollover, juice, cover, bridge. He can sell confidence for an hour and arrive with empty hands at the end of the day. Hedwig, whom everyone calls Hedi, keeps the bills straight and the kitchen warm. She is organized and soft-voiced, a good cook with tired eyes that ask for calm. Hope remains, but it walks carefully. Promises come easily. Proof rarely follows. Lately. Friday at 8:04, the front door hits the stop. Leather scrapes the frame. Gary fills the room with motion before Wilbur has set down his coffee. "I need 25,000 tonight." The words land like a wrench. Wilbur asks how much he owes them. Gary says it is not his father's business. Wilbur answers that it becomes his business the moment he is asked to pay. Silence stretches long enough to hear the clock tick and cicadas drone. Gary's jaw works and his voice drops to a warning. "You'll regret this, man." Tires spit gravel as he leaves. Saturday and Sunday move through errands and long walks. Wilbur sharpens mower blades, tightens a sagging hinge, and weeds a thin row along the fence. The threat sticks like a burr in boot leather. He writes the sentence in his notebook beneath the last entry, not for drama, just to mark the exact words. You'll regret this. Writing cools the fear. He files the page behind the month's tab and pays the electric bill with a steady hand. He eats beans and cornbread, watches the late game, and sleeps lightly with the porch light on. Morning returns, and households. Monday at 10:15, the rotary phone rings with its brass throat. Gary's voice sounds measured, almost cheerful. He apologizes for Friday and invites his father to dinner on Wednesday at 6:30. New address. Hedi's pot roast. A new start. Wilbur reaches for a pen and writes the numbers on a napkin while Gary reads them as if from a script. The cadence too smooth to be casual. The cheer feels polished rather than real, but hope taps the window anyway, persistent and small. Wilbur says he will be there and hangs up slowly. He wants to believe again. Tuesday early, a stranger's truck idles near Mrs. Henderson's mailbox. Virginia plates, not local. The driver drums the dashboard and watches the street the way a man watches a clock that refuses to move. Wilbur walks over and offers help. The man declines with a string of contradictions. Electrical, maybe carburetor, could be the battery, might be fuel. He thanks Wilbur too quickly and rolls up the window. The plate number settles in Wilbur's mind without effort, like a seed the wind insists on planting. He returns home unsettled and writes the number on an envelope. It won't leave him. Hope and pattern. Wrestle. Wilbur presses his blue suit, lays out a decent Cabernet, and chooses to believe a dinner could be a door to better days. He also tapes a second index card above the desk. Be clear. When Elmer waters the flower bed, he leans on the fence and offers a sentence that settles like a blessing. Sometimes a man has to hope with his eyes open. Wilbur nods. He will go. He will dress well. He will listen. He will not carry his checkbook. He will bring appetite the resolve to stay gentle and exact. Wednesday takes shape one small task at a time. He irons the shirt Marlene liked and polishes his shoes until they catch the window light. At lunch, he calls the mechanic 2 miles down Route 15 about mower parts, and the small talk steadies him further. He prints a grocery list and tucks it under a barn magnet. Driving past the elementary school near Maple Street, he notes the blue house with white shutters across from the playground. Hedi texts warm confirmations. So glad you can come. Pot roast at 6:30. He replies politely and leaves early, heart steady. By late afternoon, the house smells like lemon cleaner. He leaves the kitchen neat, sets the alarm, and checks the back door twice. The mantel photos catch the last gold of day. He touches Marlene's frame and says the thing he always says before hard meetings. Help me keep my voice even. He backs the car out with the care of a man who values bumpers and neighbors equally. Riverside slides by in known pieces. At Maple Street, the porch light brightens. He carries the Cabernet in a paper bag to knock with steady knuckles and a steadier heart. Calm. Maple Street glows in the soft light that pools beneath new street lamps and porch sconces. The blue house shows itself like a catalog page, roses lifted in a crystal vase, wood surfaces gleaming with fresh polish, candles set in careful triangles that smell faintly of vanilla. Gary opens the door with a smile so bright it strains belief, a quick squeeze to Wilbur's shoulder, a welcome, dad that lands like a cue line. Hedi appears instantly, apron tied with a perfect bow, hands trembling as she accepts the Cabernet and thanks him 3 times before setting it beside polished stemware. The dining room looks like a room borrowed from strangers. China Wilbur has never seen sits on placemats aligned with ruler edges. Napkins fold into peaks. Steak arrives pink and even, mashed potatoes creamed to a gloss, beans shocked crisp. Gary raises his glass for a toast to second chances and family, his eyes glittering the way a man's eyes glitter when he is playing a part. They drink, and conversation opens on a safe road. Remember the go-kart. Remember summer baseball. Remember the time the mower swallowed a dog toy and clanged like a bell. Between stories, Wilbur asks for specifics. Work, the project, how the budget looks now. Gary answers with phrases that shine without substance. Consulting alignment, new partners, a platform for growth, revenue lanes. Opening soon. He checks his watch in micro-glances that he disguises as stray itches. Hedi overfills water glasses and apologizes too quickly, eyes darting toward the hallway and back again. When Wilbur nudges toward numbers, Gary loops away. When Wilbur asks about debt, Gary smiles and tells another childhood memory, polished smooth by retelling. The room is pretty and the talk is pretty, but something grinds underneath. Wilbur cuts a bite of steak and sets his fork down to steady the table. He tries again. Your plan for the next 3 months. Even a sketch would help. Gary smooths the tablecloth instead of answering. We are disciplined now. We track everything. He taps his temple. It is all up here. Hedi nods, but her mouth tightens at the corners. She reaches for the salt she does not need and places it back where it started, careful not to clink porcelain. The candles gutter once and recover. The room holds its breath and pretends it is only dinner. Mid-meal, the rotary ringtone Wilbur still uses bursts from his jacket pocket like a bird freed from a box. He glances at the screen and sees Elmer's name. Gary freezes half a second before composing a casual shrug. Go ahead, Dad. Answer. We are just telling happy stories. Wilbur steps one pace from the table. Elmer, what can I do for you? Elmer's voice arrives low and tight, the voice a man uses when he is looking through blinds. Wilbur, are you home? Number. With Gary and Hedi. Then who is in your living room with a flashlight? The air leaves the room. Gary's fork slips and clatters. Hedi goes pale, the blood draining so completely it seems a painter pulled color from her face with a rag. Wilbur stands. I need to go. Elmer stays on the line. I will watch. Call the police. I will call now. Wilbur nods into the phone, though no one can see him, and tucks it into his jacket. Gary laughs too loud, as if volume can erase facts. Elmer's eyesight is not what it was, Dad. He probably saw a reflection. Tree shadows look like anything at night. Sit, finish dessert. Wilbur reaches for his jacket anyway. The motion is simple and final. Hedi steps back, her apron brushing a chair leg. Gary moves faster than anyone expects, sliding between Wilbur and the door with the grace of a person who has practiced the path. You are overreacting. He smiles, but his eyes flash panic, the kind that reads time like a fuse. Wilbur sees his son's right hand dip, a tiny motion that clicks metal against metal. The deadbolt turns. The key vanishes into Gary's pocket with a small practiced twist. You are not leaving, Dad. The sentence lands like a locked gate. The house hums with its air conditioner. The candles whisper. Somewhere, a refrigerator compressor starts. Wilbur's heartbeat counts a measure he knows from fieldwork, calm over crisis. He looks at his son's square jaw and the mouth that once shouted higher on a swing, and he lets the pain pass across his face without stopping. Move aside. Gary does not move. Think. If there is something at your place, I will drive you myself later. Right now, there is nothing. Elmer imagines things. People imagine. Wilbur finds Hedi's eyes. She cannot hold the look. He shifts his weight and chooses a narrow path through pride and danger. Bathroom, he says, as if asking permission to breathe. Gary hesitates, calculation and conscience wrestling for half a beat, then jerks his chin toward the hallway. Do not try anything foolish. Wilbur walks without hurry. He closes the bathroom door with ordinary care and turns the lock with a soft click that says, politeness, not strategy. The room is small and lemon bright. The window over the toilet faces the dark backyard and the neighbor's fence. He touches the latch. Paint sticks a little and gives with a sigh. He lifts the sash, 2 hands wide, then 3, then enough for shoulders to pass with care. The screen is old. He finds the tab and eases it free, leaning the aluminum against the sink without a rattle. Outside, the drop is 6 feet to soil and flowers. He thinks of his knees, then of Marlene, then of Elmer standing sentinel, and decides. He wedges an elbow through the opening, then one shoulder, then the other, breath steady, fingers catching the sill as his shoes leave tile. The landing is a careful collapse into soft earth. A root grabs his heel and lets go. Petals brush his cheek. He crouches, listens for a shout from inside, hears only the murmur of a distant television and the small scrape of a chair leg above. He rises into the night as if it were a familiar barn. The grass carries him to the side gate. It yields without squeal because someone oiled it recently. He jogs to the driveway, checks over his shoulder once and slides into his car, keys already in hand. The engine turns and settles. He backs out, slow enough to look ordinary, fast enough to feel time shorten. His breath is shallow, but controlled. He tells himself the words he wrote on an index card. Be steady, be kind, be clear, steady, first. He signals at the corner like a man determined to be seen as normal, then turns toward the ribbon of road that leads home. The sky over Riverside flickers blue and red in a low strobe as he clears the last bend. Sirens rise and fall as if measuring his arrival. He presses the accelerator with a farmer's foot, even and firm. Mailboxes flash past, then the school, then Mrs. Henderson's hedge. He turns onto his street and sees the cluster of patrol cars angled across his lawn like a protective herd. Neighbors stand in shadows with hands on mouths. Elmer waits at his fence with the stance of a guard on duty, phone still in hand, chin lifted toward Wilbur in a nod that says, I believed what I saw. Wilbur parks at the far curb to leave the driveway for police and steps out into the wash of light. Dust on his knees, jacket marked with dirt, heart steady now. He walks toward the porch where an officer meets him with professional calm. Are you Mr. Porter? Yes, I am. He glances once at his living room window and catches a moving silhouette that is not a shadow. He hears Elmer explaining, voice factual, and watches an officer listen without impatience. As he mounts the steps, he feels grief and heat and relief tumble together, then fall into rank behind a harder thing he trusts more than anger. He has escaped the performance and arrived at the truth. He straightens his tie. He answers questions clearly. He steps inside. Patrol cars angle along the curb while neighbors drift into quiet clusters. Faces lit blue as Wilbur steps from his car. Elmer stands at the fence, binoculars tucked away, steady as a fence post. Officer Ted Miller meets Wilbur halfway up the walk. We have one in custody and your house is secure. Are you hurt? Wilbur says no, only winded. Inside, the air smells of dust and warm wiring. A lamp lies tilted, but nothing looks ransacked. Through the open door, he sees the back seat of a cruiser, the nervous truck man from yesterday, head down, wrists cuffed. Otis Raines, Miller says. The name fits the face, cheeks sallow, eyes quick. He will not meet Wilbur's gaze for long. Miller recites the sequence cleanly. Elmer called at 7:34. Units arrived within 4 minutes. The back door was pried. The suspect moved room to room, then down the basement stairs. When officers announced, he started back up and surrendered without a fight. Wilbur listens without a twitch. The stillness looks like calm, but it feels like a clamp tightening around truth. He asks to see the basement. Miller leads him down the familiar steps. The file cabinet drawers sit ajar. The workbench is as Wilbur left it. Jars of washers, a neat fan of sandpaper, a penciled cut list for a fall shelf. On the concrete lies a crowbar, beside a spill of shiny drill bits. The Mosler safe, green paint, softened by decades of hands, stands patient against the support wall. Fresh gouges scratch its face like failed signatures. No breach, no give. Old steel kept its oath. Relief comes like cool air after heat haze. Miller points. He did not have time or skill. The safe did its job. We will dust and photograph. Wilbur nods and keeps his hands off the metal, a silent thank you to his father and to the harvest that once paid for the weight of that door. Back upstairs, Miller sits him at the dining table with a legal pad. Name, age, address, phone. Where were you at 6? With my son and daughter-in-law at their new house on Maple Street. When did your neighbor call? Mid-meal, a little after 7. What did he say? He asked if I was home. When I said no, he asked who was in my living room with a flashlight. Did anyone try to stop you from leaving? Yes. My son locked the door and pocketed the key. I exited through a bathroom window. Miller writes without comment, only pausing to confirm times. He asks if Wilbur can identify the suspect. Wilbur explains the truck where it did not belong, the Virginia plates, the contradictory car trouble talk, the drumming fingers on the dash. He recites the plate number he memorized on Tuesday, clear and slow so the letters land true. JKL 4729. Useful, thank you, Miller says, and they step outside for a positive identification. Elmer straightens when he sees Wilbur. No flourish, just a small tilt of the chin. In the cruiser, Otis raises his eyes and begins to talk before anyone asks. Hired to crack a safe. Dinner timed to keep the old man away. $5,000 promised if he pulled $25,000 cash. He says the name like it burns. Gary Porter. Said there would be a code somewhere. Said keep him away and it would be clean. The words do not shock Wilbur now. They set him. This is a beam finding its bearing wall. Miller asks how he knows Gary. From the card room. Who planned the timing? Gary did. Otis watched the street the day before and saw the neighbor watching back. He told Gary to keep the old man away at all costs. He glances at Wilbur. I am sorry, sir. It sounds rehearsed, like a line he has practiced for every victim he will meet. But tonight, it lands on steel. Wilbur says nothing to him. He turns to Elmer instead. Thank you. The two words carry weight. Elmer nods once, oath enough between men who water their hedges at the same hour. Miller closes the door, signals transport. The cruiser rolls off and the street exhales. Silence returns and memory lays out pages on the table of Wilbur's mind. The giving ledger opens. $8,000 to clean a poker mess. $12,000 for a sure bet that became a sure hole. $1,300 for alternator and tags when the truck died on the shoulder. $1,950 to open a new lease after an eviction notice. Every line marked gift. No interest, no receipts demanded, because he is my son. That ink overlays the basement picture. Drill bits like teeth, the pry scar in the jam, gray dust powdered near a hinge. The ledger speaks patience. The floor speaks force. He does not need to lecture himself. The objects testify. Miller returns with a printed case card. Anything to add? Time, Wilbur says, 1958. He notes it on the pad. He writes the names of each officer and the case number. He writes the plate again, though it is already recorded. He writes Elmer Jenkins observed lights moving room to room. He writes suspect apprehended in basement. He writes safe intact. He writes no property missing. Apparent. He writes sun-locked exit door. He writes window exit. He writes conspiracy by my son. He underlines the last 3 words once, not for drama, but for clarity. A line forms across his thinking as clean as chalk on a slab. Kindness is not canceled. Subsidy ends. He will carry food to a hungry person. He will drive a man to the first counseling session and wait in the lobby until the paperwork is complete. He will not pay another bill that is not his bill. The decision clicks into place with the soft finality of a deadbolt seating home. He takes the pen and writes the line on his pad, so the choice lives where facts live. He borrows a clipboard and builds a record that would satisfy a foreman. Plate as recalled, time of call and arrival from Miller's watch, names of responders, case number, Mosler intact, tool marks only, crowbar recovered, suspect confessed, door locked at son's residence, window exit, conspiracy by my son. He prints each letter squarely, the habit of a man who keeps fences true and ledgers neat. Elmer hovers until the pen rests. You try to sleep some, neighbor. I will keep an eye out. Wilbur squeezes his forearm once in thanks that wastes no words. Miller leaves a card with direct numbers and asks him to photograph marks before cleaning and to call if he finds anything else out of place. I will, Wilbur says, and the officer believes him because everything about the man says follow through. When the last unit pulls away and the porch light owns the night, Wilbur stands in his doorway for one long breath. The living room is his. The safe is his. The peace is his to rebuild. He lays the clipboard on his desk beneath the index card that reads, "Be steady, be kind, be clear." He adds a second card beneath it and prints new words with the same careful hand. Document first. Decide second. He looks toward the hedge where Elmer's house rests under a calm roof and nods once, as if signing a simple contract with the dark. Then he locks his door, turns off the lamp, and lets the house hold. The convoy of cruisers pulls onto Maple Street with lights muted to steady glow. No sirens now, only the quiet authority of engines rolling in line. Wilbur follows at a distance in his sedan, his headlights low, his jaw set. He watches them break in unison before the blue house with white shutters. A stage that earlier gleamed with candles and polish now shows its seams. Suitcases clutter the hallway as Hedi opens the door, her eyes red, her shoulders sagging as if she has aged in the hours since dinner. Behind her, Gary paces, hands restless, a jacket half folded over one bag, the picture of a man bracing for collapse. Officer Miller steps forward. His voice is steady, no louder than needed. Gary William Porter, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit burglary, solicitation of criminal activity, and conspiracy to commit theft. The words strike with a rhythm that sounds like a hammer driving nails. Gary shakes his head too fast, words spilling. This is insane. My father doesn't know what he's saying. He's confused. You can't trust an old man's stories. But denial wavers when Hedi speaks, her voice small but sharp enough to split through. You locked him in. She does not meet Gary's eyes. She speaks to the floor, but the truth carries. Gary falters, tries to turn the denial into outrage. He says he was with her all evening. He pleads for her to confirm. Hedi steps back instead of forward, tears running down her cheek, and that gesture carries more weight than any shouted. Accusation. Officers guide Gary toward the porch. His protests tangle into themselves. He says it is Elmer's paranoia. He says it is a mistake. He says anything but the truth that already stands written across the night. The handcuffs close with a click that Wilbur hears even from the curb. Wilbur does not gloat. He does not smirk or sigh or speak. He stands with his hands at his sides, watching as a builder tests a beam. Facts pressed down, weight applied, failure exposed. His son is not a structure that holds. The collapse is plain. What remains is to document, not to argue. He touches his pocket where the folded index card rests. Number 3, the one he wrote before leaving the house. Document first, decide second. It is not an ornament, it is a compass. He feels the ink against the paper through the fabric of his trousers and knows that clarity matters more than anger. He does not raise his voice at Gary as officers recite the rights. He does not shout that years of help led to this betrayal. He does not replay the ledger line by line in a litany of debts. He tells himself one truth once, and he holds to it. He will press charges. He will write the statement in the clear hand he uses for all records. He will let the system carry the weight now. He will not argue with his son in the street. He will not be baited by denial or threats. He will not chase the echo of the boy in the Polaroid. He will face the man who stands cuffed on the porch and see him as he is. Gary thrashes in the back seat of the cruiser, eyes wild, hair damp with sweat. He pounds the window with the heel of his hand and shouts that this is family, this is blood, this is unforgivable. The words hit glass and go nowhere. Wilbur only notes the time, 9:24. He marks the number in his mind, a fact to set down later. His calm is not detachment, but discipline. He knows rage can fog the record. He knows clarity is survival. He knows truth. Spoken once, clean and plain, will hold longer than 100 speeches. As the convoy begins to roll away, Miller approaches Wilbur. "We'll need you at the station tomorrow to finalize everything." "The case is solid, sir. Between Mr. Raines's confession and Mrs. Porter's statement, the record is strong." Wilbur nods once. He does not thank or protest. He notes Miller's words, Miller's name, Miller's badge number. He notes the sequence. He will write it all tonight before sleep. The ledger will have a new entry, not of dollars, but of decisions. He will mark that the line has been crossed, that subsidy ends, that truth has been entered into the book. No shouting, no fire, no wasted breath, only ink on paper and a steady hand. The station smells like old coffee and floor wax when Wilbur arrives just after 8. He parks 2 blocks away to keep his head clear and walks under a sky that has not decided yet between gray and blue. The front desk officer checks his license, writes his name on a lined sheet, and buzzes him. Through Officer Ted Miller meets him in the hall with his sleeves rolled and a clipboard tucked under one arm. "Morning, Mr. Porter. Thank you for coming in promptly. We will do this once, and we will do it right." They step into interview 2. A room that makes its own statement with blank walls, 2 chairs, and a table worn to a low shine where hands have rested for years. Miller sets a digital recorder on a paper pad, clicks it on, and reads into the microphone for the record. Date, time, case number, present parties. He nods for Wilbur to begin when ready. Wilbur places his spiral ledger on the table, opens to a flagged page, and folds his hands. His voice is even and slow, like he is laying out measurements for a beam he has to carry. At 9:14 last night, while I was eating dinner at my son's house on Maple Street, my neighbor Elmer Jenkins called me. He asked if I was at home. I said I was at my son's. He said there were flashlight beams moving in my living room, then my kitchen, then upstairs. He asked if he should call the police. I told him yes. I stood up to leave. My son stepped in front of the door. Miller lets the silence hold for the length of a breath, then keeps the questions simple and specific. What did he do next? He locked the deadbolt and pocketed the key. Described the sound, a clean click and the feel of metal setting. What did you do? I asked him to move. He refused. I told him I needed the bathroom. I closed the door, opened the window, removed the screen, and dropped to the flower bed. How far down? About 6 feet. Any injury? Scraped knee, nothing more. How long to drive home? 12 minutes. Who was the first officer you spoke to? You. What did you observe in your house? Patrol cars, lights, and a man in handcuffs in the back seat of a cruiser. Miller nods and gestures toward the folder Wilbur brought. You said you had documentation. We will copy and return your originals. Wilbur lays out the contents in an order that tells its own story. A phone screenshot with Elmer's name, the timestamp and call duration. A close photo of the lock hardware with the bolt thrown. A photo of the bathroom window with the screen leaning against mulch. 2 photos of the old Musler safe, one wide, one tight on tool marks. A sheet with the Virginia plate number he memorized on Tuesday morning. A printed text of Elmer's written account with times and positions of the moving lights. He sets his ledger to one side, palm resting on the cover. Miller slides each item into a clear sleeve, labels them with a neat block hand, and places them in a binder marked Porter Home. He glances at the ledger. Do you intend to introduce any pages? Wilbur slides it forward and turns it so the lines face the camera. I am not here for revenge. I am here for truth. This ledger shows a pattern of support. He turns pages slowly so the recorder can hear what the camera sees. 2019, poker debt catch-up, 8,000, gift, 2,020, track money, 12,000, promise to repay, never repaid. 2021, truck alternator and tags, 1,300, gift. 2022, apartment deposit after eviction notice, 1,950, gift. He closes the book. That is the backdrop, not the argument. The argument is the lock and the plan. An investigator in a gray suit steps in, gathers the binder and the ledger for scanning, and returns within minutes. He places the originals in front of Wilbur in the same order and signs the chain of custody log with the time. Miller recaps the statement in his own words, checks each point against Wilbur's answers, and clicks the recorder off. Thank you, Mr. Porter. Your account is coherent and corroborated. He breathes and steadies his hands. In the corridor, Wilbur sees Hedi on a bench with her hands folded around a tissue and a small wedding photo face down on her knee. A victim liaison named Alvarez stands with her. Hedi's shoulders lift when she notices Wilbur, then settle. Alvarez asks if she is ready. Hedi nods and follows into interview 3. Wilbur does not intrude. He sits by a bulletin board with neighborhood watch flyers and listens to voices through a wall that carries sound like the hum of a refrigerator. Inside, Hedi's words are steady at first and then tremble. I did not know the full plan. Gary told me to make the house nice and to keep dinner simple. He said you and he needed a new start. He bought roses and borrowed china. He told me to keep the conversation light. When your phone rang, he froze. When you stood up, he smiled in a way that was wrong. When he turned the lock, I knew something was broken. I could not make myself move. I am telling you the truth. I will give my phone logs and my receipts. I will not lie about what I saw. Wilbur keeps his reply short. Thank you for telling the truth. Hedi nods, wipes her eyes, and breathes like she is lifting a weight she can finally set down. The liaison thanks her, collects her statement, and offers a card with a number for support services. Hedi presses the card in both hands as if it might steady them. Officer Miller returns and brings Wilbur to a conference room where a woman in a navy suit waits with a file open and a legal pad squared to the table's edge. The assistant district attorney introduces herself, offers water, and recaps the likely charges with the tone of someone who measures loads and spans. Conspiracy to commit burglary, solicitation, false imprisonment based on the locked door and the forced exit. She explains that family does not lessen the seriousness. It often increases it because a home was used as a stage to harm trust. She outlines the path that cases like this usually take. The co-defendant has already given a recorded confession. The neighbor will be a strong witness. Your photos and ledger show pattern, access, and motive to distract you. Because the record is strong, the defense may seek a plea, restitution, probation, mandated counseling, and a no-contact order are all possible. If the case goes to trial, your clarity today will hold. She pauses. You do not need to speak loudly or dramatically. The truth will carry if it is consistent. She asks targeted questions and writes answers in a neat script. Do you fear immediate retaliation? Number. Do you want a protective order? I want distance and quiet. Do you seek financial restitution? The safe was not breached. I want the record to say what happened and to say that I will not pay his debts. She writes those last words exactly and underlines will not once with her pen. A staffer hands Wilbur a small white envelope with the case number, the advocate card, and a short checklist titled Preserve and Avoid. Save texts, voicemails, and social messages. Do not respond to pressure. Do not post about the case. Call if any contact concerns you. Wilbur tucks the envelope into his inside jacket pocket next to an index card that reads, Be clear. On the way home, he stops at the copy center on Main. He makes duplicates of the phone screen, the lock photo, the window screen leaning in mulch, the safe images, the handwritten note from Elmer, and the plate number page. He buys a new manila folder, prints a label, and carries the stack home under his arm like a careful set of plans. At the kitchen table, he lays the originals into one folder and the copies into another, and weights each with a brass paperweight so the corners do not curl. Then he types a dated memo and prints it with his full name at the bottom. Today, I provided a complete statement regarding the events at my home and at my son's residence. I submitted photographs, notes, and names. I asked that the record reflect the locked door, the pocketed key, the bathroom window exit, the apprehension in my house, the confession by Otis Raines, and the corroboration by Hedi Porter. I affirmed that I will not fund Gary's debts. I will stand in truth. I will not humiliate anyone. He signs, adds the time, and places the page to dry. He slides the memo behind the framed photo of 12-year-old Gary beside the go-kart, the one with grease on his thumbs and light in his eyes. The picture has stayed on the mantle through every season. He never hid it, not even on hard years. The paper tucked behind the frame turns the photograph into a boundary marker. The boy stays. The record stands. The financial door is closed. He steps back and sees both truths at once and feels the difference between love and subsidy as if it were written on the air. Elmer knocks once and leans in, hat in hand. Just checking, neighbor. Wilbur pours 2 coffees and sets them on the table. He gives Elmer the short version. Statement given. Evidence copied. The case will move. Elmer nods and provides his own edition. I wrote my account down with times, he says, patting his shirt pocket. When I saw lights, where they moved, when the cruisers arrived, I will sign whatever they need. 2 men who built things and fixed things sip coffee in a quiet kitchen and let the quiet be a complete sentence. Afternoon comes on with the steady tick in the den and the kettle's soft click when water reaches its point. Wilbur opens his ledger, turns past years of neat lines, and adds a single sentence. March. Support. Suspended indefinitely. He does not slash through anything. He does not write blame. He tapes a new index card above the desk beside the old one. Document first. Decide second. The words feel like steel set into a span. The phone vibrates. The screen shows a number he knows by heart. He lets it pass to voicemail and listens on speaker from across the table. Dad, this is spinning out. You can fix it. Tell them you were confused. Say you misunderstood. I will make it right with the people I owe. Please call me. Wilbur looks at the white envelope from the courthouse, reads the line that says, Do not respond to pressure, and places the phone face down without anger. The message saves itself to a new folder he names Boundary Reactions. He walks the house, not to check locks, but to feel the rooms as they are, now that the truth is set. The safe sits quiet on its concrete pad where his father bolted it decades ago. He runs his palm along the paint, thanks his father under his breath for choosing something that holds. He raises the bathroom window once, reseats the screen, and notes the stiffness in his knee as data, not drama. He wipes the latch with a clean cloth and writes. Latch tightened in a small notebook he keeps for the house. A probation clerk calls to confirm his address for victim notifications. Wilbur answers politely, repeats his address, and writes the clerk's name, the time, and the subject on a yellow pad. He files that page behind today's memo. He is not stacking paper to build a wall. He is laying a simple path he can walk tomorrow without wondering what he said or forgot. Hedi calls in the early evening. Her voice is thin with fatigue, but clear. I wanted to say I am sorry for what happened. I wanted to say I told the truth because it was the only right thing left. Wilbur tells her he heard and that he appreciates it. He does not offer comfort beyond that, not because he is cold, but because he has learned the shape of the line that keeps help from turning into a hook. She thanks him for picking up. He hears relief in the exhale and the click when the call ends. When the light outside goes from white to gold, he returns to the mantel and lifts the frame to check the memo. It lies flat behind the photo. He wipes the glass. He sets the frame down so the boy's grin faces the room. He takes a small brass plate from a box on his desk and screws it into the wood above his workspace with the careful turns of someone who does not strip ahead. The letters catch the lamplight. Document first. Decide second. He straightens the table, caps his pen, and slides the folders into a drawer that shuts with a wooden sigh. The printer goes quiet. The stapler rests square. The house breathes again. Justice is not thunder today. It is a stack of pages, a recorded statement, a neat copy of a neighbor's note, a case number in a white envelope, and a father who chose to write the truth and not argue it. He turns off the kettle he had set on the stove and forgot, smiles at the small mistake, and lets the room fall to a clean hush. Before bed, he pulls a fresh index card and writes 3 lines he wants, waiting at morning. Hold the boundary. Save what is yours. Leave the door open for truth, not for debt. He pins it under the brass plate, switches off the lamp, and stands in the doorway long enough to memorize the order of the room. The mantel holds the boy's photo. The drawer holds the record. The night holds its peace. He sleeps in a house that now has its own paper gavel, set down by a steady hand that intends to stay steady. The fluorescent hum in courtroom. 3A washes the morning in a tired light. A bailiff calls the case, and Gary William Porter shuffles in with wrists joined by chain, eyes scanning exits that do not exist. He looks smaller without his smile, a man peeled down to nerves and habit. 2 chairs over, Otis Raines sits sallow and resigned, his cuffs quiet against the rail. The bench clock clicks. The judge adjusts glasses. The clerk reads the docket with a level voice that treats every name the same. State versus Porter and Raines, conspiracy to commit burglary, solicitation of criminal activity, attempted theft, and unlawful restraint. The language is dry. The weight is not. Gary glances once to the gallery and finds Wilbur seated 2 rows back, hands folded, expression steady. Hedi sits on the aisle, clutching a tissue that has given up the fight, her gaze forward and fixed. Elmer takes the end seat, hat in lap, spine straight, like a man at attention. No theatrics mark the arraignment. The charges are read, and each defendant hears the facts that have followed them from kitchen to street to station to this room. Otis answers first. Not guilty, Your Honor. His lawyer's hand rests on his sleeve as if to borrow calm. Gary speaks after a beat that stretches too long. Not guilty. The words wobble, then sit. The judge reviews bond conditions already set at first appearance. No contact with victim. No contact with co-defendant. Stay-away orders for both homes. Weekly check-ins. A drug and alcohol screen. The chain of the law wraps quietly, one loop at a time. The bailiff escorts the men out. The fluorescent lights keep humming. The plea path opens in a side conference room with glass walls and a table scarred by years of pens. The public defender outlines a proposal for Gary, probation with treatment, a promise of restitution, and counseling. He speaks of addiction, neurochemistry, and the desperation that follows a string of losses. He does not excuse the locked door. He tries to soften it. The assistant district attorney listens, patient and direct, and turns to the facts that will live in exhibits: a locked deadbolt, a pocketed key, a father turned into a mark. Family does not mitigate when family is the chosen victim, she says. It aggravates. The state would accept probation only with strict terms, full restitution at a set schedule, community service that faces the harm, mandatory counseling verified by the court, and a no-contact provision that bars intimidation, financial asks, and triangulation through third parties. The counselor should not be a friend of a friend. The plan must have steel. The agreement, if accepted, will not hide the harm behind polite language. It will name it, measure it, and require work that matches what was taken and remembered. Hedi's voice comes from the doorway. I will not enable, she says, hands folded at her waist. I will testify to the lock. I will testify to the planning, the borrowed china, the roses, the suitcases by the door. I will say what I saw and what I did not stop. She does not cry as she says it. She saves tears for later. Calendar days slip forward. A hearing on motions produces nothing dramatic, only rulings on photographs and phone logs that will come in. The judge keeps time and temperature steady. He asks for brevity and gets it. When trial day arrives, it feels like a long meeting held in the public's name. A handful of neighbors slide into benches. Reporters wait by the hallway, hoping for a quote that will not come. The prosecution's case is linear in the way that a good road is straight where it must be. Exhibit 1 is the 911 log tied to Elmer's call. Exhibit 2 is the photograph of the deadbolt, enlarged enough for the jury to see the scratch where a key turned hard. Exhibit 3 is the bathroom window with the screen in mulch, dirt streaking one edge of the frame. Exhibit 4 is the safe's face with a crescent of bare metal where a tool slipped. Exhibit 5 is the text thread on Otis's phone that shows times and directions sent before the dinner invitation. Elmer takes the stand and removes his hat the way men of a certain generation do, without thinking. He gives his full name, age, and address. He answers gently and precisely. On Tuesday morning, I saw an unfamiliar truck opposite Mrs. Henderson's mailbox. The driver stayed for hours. He refused help and gave 2 different stories about his engine. On Wednesday night, I saw flashlight arcs moving room to room in Wilbur's house. Slow sweeps, then a pause, then a sweep again. At 6:58 p.m., I called Wilbur. He answered, and I stayed at my window until officers arrived. The line that lands is simple. A good fence is watching your neighbor's yard like it is your own when he is not home. Heads in the gallery nod. The judge allows the sentence to sit before the next question. Hedi follows. She holds the rail like it is the edge of a counter. She explains the preparation for dinner, the borrowed pieces, the script of safe stories about childhood, the repeated micro glances at a watch. She describes the lock moment without garnish. He slid in front of the door, turned the deadbolt, and put the key in his pocket. She admits she froze. She admits she moved dishes and fiddled with napkins and did not tell her father-in-law to run. What did you think was happening? The ADA asks. I thought he was stalling his father until something else finished. Officer Ted Miller testifies to the apprehension in the basement and the statements made on scene. The co-defendant's recorded confession plays with its flat, tired cadence. Otis describes the price offered and the plan agreed to. He describes the time window and the target. The jury looks at their notes. No one looks at Gary. Wilbur's turn comes, and he walks to the stand as if he is mounting a small ladder. 1 foot, then the next, steady with purpose. He swears to tell the truth. He gives his name and occupation. Retired farmer. He keeps his statement to observable truths and refuses to wander into character assessments. I sat down to dinner. My neighbor called. He asked if I was home. I said no. He asked who was in my house with a flashlight. I stood up. My son stepped in front of the door and locked it. He put the key in his pocket. I asked him to move. He refused. I asked to use the bathroom. I left through the window and drove home. He is asked about the ledger. He answers with care. I have given my son gifts over the years. He lists the amounts and purposes without bitterness or flourish. Poker debts, track money, a truck alternator and tags, an apartment deposit after an eviction notice. I never charged interest. I never demanded receipts. I kept records for myself. He looks toward the jury. I love my son. This is why I am here. The judge nods once as if to say the court has heard the only sermon it will need today. Love with boundaries. The defense cross-examines gently, then tries to widen the lens to make room for compulsion and compulsion's logic. Wilbur does not debate motives. He returns to facts. A lock turned, a key pocketed, a window opened, a neighbor called, a safe scarred, a confession given. He thanks the defense attorney for the question the way he would thank a clerk who hands him change, and he steps down. Closing arguments are short by design. The ADA speaks of planned harm, masked as reconciliation, and of the quiet violence of a lock turned against family. She points to the photographs, the logs, the testimony that fits like boards measured and cut. The defense asks for mercy within accountability and repeats that sickness played a role. The judge sends the jury to deliberate on the counts that remain after the parties meet briefly at sidebar to streamline the verdict sheet. They are gone less than an hour. The verdicts come in crisp: guilty on conspiracy, guilty on solicitation, guilty on attempted theft, guilty on unlawful restraint. No one cheers. There is no reason to. The judge sets sentencing for the following week and orders. Updated pre-sentence reports. Gary is released pending sentencing on the same strict no-contact conditions, monitored by pretrial services. Otis remains in custody. Sentencing day arrives with the formality of a calendar obligation. The same hum, the same clock, different stakes. Otis stands first. The judge notes his history, his cooperation, and the reality that he walked into a stranger's home with tools for a safe. 2 years county time, credit for time served, a recommendation for programs within the facility. The gavel taps once. Gary stands next, thinner by worry, older by weeks. The defense repeats that addiction built a tunnel and he crawled through it. The ADA repeats that addiction did not turn the lock, a person did. The judge speaks in measured paragraphs that have the feel of a plan rather than a performance. Family is not a bank. Love is not collateral. You made your father's home a problem to be solved rather than a place to be protected. You chose a staged dinner to keep him away while another man worked his safe. You wrote the script. The outcome belongs to you. 5 years probation with intensive supervision. Full restitution for all damages and costs. 500 hours of community service to be performed with organizations that serve older adults and repair homes. Mandatory counseling with verified attendance. Gambling treatment specifically ordered. A no-contact condition that forbids direct or indirect requests for money, even under the cover of emergencies. Any violation will bring prison. If you appear at your father's home or contact him outside this court order, you will violate your freedom. The judge turns to Wilbur for a victim statement if he wants it. Wilbur rises only to say one sentence that sums his whole presence. I ask the court to enforce its orders strictly. I will keep mine. He sits. The judge nods. Then we are aligned. Outside, microphones bloom like weeds by the steps. Reporters call his name with that certain professional urgency that treats other people's lives as today's assignment. Wilbur does not slow. He is not angry. He is finished. The camera catches only his hands as he passes, empty, still, steady. Hedi slips out a side door with a folder clutched to her chest. Elmer tips his hat once and follows Wilbur down the granite stairs to the sidewalk. Neither man speaks until the curb. They part at the corner with a handshake that seals what the court recorded. Community stood up when it counted. Wilbur walks to his truck without looking back. The courthouse recedes in the rearview mirror, like a barn you pass on a country road, solid, necessary, not the place you live. He drives home by habit and by something deeper, and when he pulls into his driveway, the porch looks exactly like it did before a lock clicked and a window opened. Only now it looks protected, on purpose. He hangs his jacket on the same hook. He places the case copy of the sentencing order in a folder labeled Porter-Court. He slides it beside the folder labeled Porter, Home. He sets his keys on the bowl and rests his palms on the edge of the table until the breath he did not know he was holding leaves him. The house is quiet and honest. The safe sits where his father set it, scarred on the surface, whole at the core. He writes one last line on an index card and pins it under the brass plate above the desk. Boundaries kept, peace kept, love kept clean. The words are not a victory banner. They are a maintenance checklist. He turns the kettle on and watches the small blue flame hold steady. He lets the gavel in his chest go silent. Consequence has landed. Work remains, and it is the ordinary work of living without drama and with documents that tell a true story when asked. The morning after sentencing begins with a list. Wilbur lays the checklist on the counter, circles locks, sensors, alerts, camera, ledger, credit freeze, then starts with the door. He removes the old deadbolt, measures twice, and fits a high-grade cylinder that turns with a smooth, certain click. The chain slides with no snag. Precision calms him. He moves to windows one by one, replacing flimsy latches with keyed stops and setting a schedule to check them each month. A motion sensor goes high on the driveway soffit while another covers the back gate. The garage gets a contact switch that chimes softly when the door opens. By lunch, the house feels the same, only steadier. At the desk, he logs into the bank, enables real-time alerts, and sets thresholds. Any withdrawal triggers a chime on his phone. Any card purchase outside town pings him. He orders a small fire safe for the ledger and receipts. When the confirmation email arrives, he prints it and files it under Home Upgrades. Credit bureaus open in separate tabs. He freezes each file, writes the unfreeze pins, and tucks them into an envelope titled Do Not Share. The porch camera goes up last, wired to a simple app that shows a quiet rectangle of steps and geraniums. He stands at the sidewalk and looks at the house. It is the door Gary once ran through. Now it carries one new lens and a promise to himself. Calm is the goal, not suspicion. Prepared, not paranoid. Afternoon brings the law office on Main. In a conference room, Wilbur and the attorney review beneficiaries and powers of attorney. They add the clause that needed saying. No loans without a promissory note and collateral. A 3-day consideration period on any request. No cash handoffs. The attorney nods. Simple rules save heartache. They draft a values letter to ride with the will, written in Wilbur's square hand. Money follows truth, respect, and a plan. If those three show up together, I can help. If they do not, love stays while money sits. He dates it, signs it, and feels something uncoil. On the way home, he stops for screws and a brass label plate. At the porch table, he stamps small letters and wipes the metal clean. Document first, decide second. He mounts it above the desk, with 2 short screws and a level eye. Evening sun throws a bar of light across the words and the framed photo of a boy beside a go-kart. Elmer arrives with 2 cold beers. They sit where the breeze finds them and watch the Henderson kids weave bicycles between chalk drawings. Talk drifts across football schedules and a rumor about the hardware store changing hands. Wilbur thanks him again. Elmer waves it away with a half laugh. That is what neighbors do. You would have done it for me. They move to the fence and look at the street where the unfamiliar truck once sat. It is only asphalt now. The quiet feels earned. When Elmer heads back to his porch, he points to the new camera. That little eye will help you sleep. he says. Wilbur nods. It already has. Projects return the next morning. He pulls the sander from its case and sets to work on the deck boards, drawing the machine in long passes until cedar brightens. He wipes, vacuums, then brushes on a seal that settles into grain. The garage pegboard earns one more row of labeled jars. The Mosler safe waits downstairs, stubborn and faithful. Wilbur wipes the scuffs around the dial, polishes the door face, and pats the top with the affection a farmer gives a good draft horse. "You held," he says to the steel. He oils the hinges so the door whispers. He closes it and spins the dial to a halt. At the desk, he opens the ledger and draws a line. Next to today's date, he prints a sentence he never thought he would write. Gary, no financial support effective today. He sits with the words until the ink dries. He does not rip pages or cross out history. He turns one. The go-kart photo goes beside Marlene's portrait, so the two smiles keep company again. I will always be your father, but not your financier. If you want me in your life, bring truth, not invoices. The sentences are fittings tightened with a wrench and checked for leaks. He puts the ledger into the fire safe when it arrives and sets the safe under the desk. The tiny door shuts with a snug thunk. Small joys fill the calendar boxes that worry used to claim. He writes steak on Saturday's grocery list. He adds tomatoes, real butter, and coffee that smells like Saturday morning. A paperback waits on the porch table. He sits at dusk and reads while swallows stitch the air. The weekend after next earns a penciled note. Lake trip with Elmer, bring sandwiches. Inside, numbers sit where they should in his checkbook. The alert pings are quiet. He turns the porch light on as the street dims and watches it throw a calm circle that reaches the first step. The brass plate above the desk catches the last flare of gold, then relaxes into lamplight. Document first, decide second. It looks less like a rule now and more like a way to keep upright when wind pushes. Hedi's name appears once on his phone a week later. The message is short. I am sorry. I am getting help. I will not ask you for anything. He writes a reply that matches the shape of his new life. I wish you well. Take care of yourself. I will not discuss money. He presses send and feels the floor hold. On a Tuesday, he walks through the house. He checks sight lines to the street, the angle of the new camera, the chime on the garage door. He sets spare keys with Elmer and writes their location in his planner. He tests smoke alarms, flips breakers to learn which switch controls what, and adds labels in neat print. He places a flashlight on each nightstand. Mail brings form letters from the credit bureaus, and he files them with the pins in that envelope marked "Do Not Share." The attorney mails clean copies of the updated documents. He reviews them with coffee and the quiet satisfaction of finishing long rows in a field. He calls the insurance agent to list the security upgrades. The discount is small, but the documentation matters. He scans receipts into a simple folder. By week's end, the rhythm of his life sounds like itself again. Kettle whistle, pencil scratch, the quick steps of the Henderson kids, Elmer's laugh over the hedge, a mower starting on the first pull. The porch camera shows a cat at midnight and a postal carrier at noon, evidence that a house can be ordinary after a storm and better for the repair. On Sunday, he grills that steak, lets it rest, and takes the first bite with gratitude and appetite. He thinks of the sentence the judge used and the one he wrote for himself. Family is not a bank. Love is not collateral. He adds a third line while he eats on the porch. Dignity lives where boundaries live. When the plates are washed and set to dry, he walks to the deck and stands with both hands on the rail. The street is quiet. The camera's tiny status light glows. A late game kicks off up and down the block. He breathes in cedar and the comfort of work finished for the day. He taps the rail with his knuckles, once like a farmer tapping a gate, to hear if it will hold. It does. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe, like, and share it with someone who needs the reminder that kindness must be steady, but also strong. We tell these stories because life has a way of testing whether our love can survive without becoming a loan office. Tell us in the comments, have you ever had to draw a boundary that protected your peace even if it cost you something in the moment? What happened, and what did you learn from it? In Wilbur's story, the lesson was simple yet firm. He could still love his son without handing over another dollar, and he could keep dignity intact by documenting every step rather than shouting. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about making sure the door to your own house, your own heart, and your own peace remains strong enough to stay upright when someone else leans too hard against it. Next time, we will shift from front doors to fence lines. A neighbor decides to move a fence 5 feet into our yard, claiming the land as his own. At first, it looks like a simple mistake, but when survey pins and a drone map redraw the truth, the real boundary becomes undeniable. You will see how a small strip of grass can spark a big test of fairness and neighborly respect. On screen, you will see the closing images. A redacted incident report stamped official. The photo of the deadbolt that Gary turned against his father. The fence line stretching straight and true. A notary stamp sealing the papers. The brass plate over the desk. A ledger page turning to a clean sheet. And finally, the porch light glowing against dusk. Subscribe for new stories weekly and share your story in the comments.